Hello and welcome back to the channel. So this is for episode 3 of Chewing the Apex. So this is a new channel that we started here where we talk about everything in motorsport really, and particularly F1 that's happened over the last 7 days. So I try to do it every week. So who am I? I'm Tino. I run a YouTube channel here called Faithful Tino Racing, where we do modifications to my GR Yaris as well as some sim racing and just enjoy motoring content. So if you're enjoying this, appreciate a thumbs up or a like or subscribe. This will be available also on our social media channels here, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So let's get to the first topic this week. So our first topic this week is going to be Ferrari, but in a different sense, not quite Formula One. So this week Ferrari unveiled their new WEC/Le Mans Challenger. So Le Mans has been opened up, and WEC as well as IMSA have all been opened up so the same cars can compete in the same championships. And we've seen other cars from the likes of BMW, Cadillac and a few others, as well as Peugeot, Toyota, Glickenhaus. So it looks like it's a real renaissance for the Le Mans and endurance racing. And Ferrari, for the first time in decades, are back at the top flight. And they unveiled, we've seen some spy shots, but their Ferrari 499P. So it follows the naming strategy from previous Le Mans prototypes by talking about, I believe it's the cubic displacement of each cylinder, and P being prototype because it's a prototype car. Now I have to say, look at the pictures because this car looks amazing. It looks similar to design ethos to the BMW Challenger, but it is undeniably a Ferrari. You can see the Ferrari design language is very strong there. I think it's going to be quite interesting as well because they've gone for a 3-litre V6 twin turbocharged, but it's 120 degree angle V in there, so it's going to be very low, very compact, which is kind of what came in the road car, the 296 road car, but apparently it's a completely different engine because it's a stress member. But it's going to be interesting to see how that does. And also this week we had some spy shots of their GT3 car, so the 296 GT3 car, and again that looks absolutely the bee's knees. So can't wait to see both of these in there. Oh, and a shout out to livery. Now the livery on the new car is, love it. It's got some classic Ferrari in there. I like the black wings with the yellow flashes with the black Ferrari text. Love the Ferrari across the top of the windshield. It's the old school Ferrari yellow. Keep on saying that, yellow with the black Ferrari text with the F that goes all the way across. Really like that. So the next talking point is the cost cap. So I know we've spoken about this in episode 1 and episode 2. But we've finally found out exactly how much Red Bull have overspent and what the punishment is. So we've been told it's 1.8 million in pounds, I bet $2.2 million. I believe there was some sort of tax credit issue there where they believed they were going to be eligible for a tax credit. They didn't get it, and that meant that if they had got that, they would only been 400,000 over. But there was a list of 13 different infractions that the FIA and Red Bull disagreed on, which is quite a lot. I feel like there's no smoke without fire in that kind of situation. The penalty was a 10% reduction in wind tunnel test time and a $7 million fine. Now the fine, I don't think that's going to make much difference. $7 million to a company that is now working to get their spend below where they was before. Doesn't really make any difference. 10%, yes, that will make a difference, but I think some points have been pointed out in the media that a 10% reduction in wind tunnel testing time is going to make an impact on the car and their car performance, but it just means that you are free to almost save money and put resources elsewhere. So if, for instance, you have a reduction in time there, why don't you go and then spend more money on making the car lighter or improving other suspension characteristics and things like that, which I think that's a totally valid point because they'll just get a net benefit there. Personally, I feel like the penalty is a bit too lean. I think 25% reduction in wind tunnel testing would definitely make it something that you're not going to take. Because bear in mind, this is overspend for last year, and the penalty will only apply for a year from the start, from like, I think it's October the 20th or something like that. So they've had the leg up for all that time, which is, yes, they'll lose a bit of that, but they've already reaped the benefits of this. I know some people have called it cheating, but in effect it is cheating, but they've already reaped the benefits of it. That's what gets my go. If you've got any opinions on this, so just slap it down in the comments, or hit me up on the social medias, and just you give me your feedback. This is a discussion after all. So we get to the actual weekend, and we'll start with the actual race and the start. I did do a post on my Instagram where I thought the start was going, and my thoughts were there's going to be a lot of drafting down to that first corner. Somebody's going to send it, either it be Max, Russell, George, or one of the Ferraris. And my prediction was somebody or several cars were going to just cut that first 1, 2, 3 chicane there, go across the grass, and then enter back on that second straight there. And I was surprised it was none of that. Max got a good start, stayed to the left, and nobody overtook him. It looked like Lewis and George got kind of in each other's way, but got through it in the end. And it was kind of a mundane start. I was really surprised by that. I think there was a little bit more jostling going back behind, but it's probably one of the cleaner starts. I felt almost like all the titles were over. People would be sending it a bit harder, but evidently they didn't. So the next thing I want to talk about is overtaking in Mexico. It's traditionally been quite hard, and it again seemed quite hard this weekend. Now, one thing that I seem to notice is we all talk about there's less air because of the extreme altitude, so they're running Monaco wings but getting Monza levels of downforce. Now, one thing that I could see in the start of the race was cars were getting DRS and catching the car ahead, but it was almost like the cars were gear limited. Now, you have to bear in mind these are 8-speed gearboxes, but they can't change the gear ratios. Years gone by, they would change the gear ratios every race, so it was a French gearbox or a German gearbox which had the ratios specifically for that. And yes, I know that was more in the normally aspirated days where the cars had a narrower sweet spot, a narrower peak torque, whereas the torque on these turbocharged cars is quite wide, so you can be a bit more flexible. But these gear ratios are set at the start of the year and they can't be changed. And it seemed like some of the cars were getting a draft, getting a DRS, and then just getting to that point where there was no more to go faster. We were seeing some pretty high speeds. I think 346, 350 kph. So that's got to be near the VMAX of the gearbox. So I don't know whether that played into it. Let me know. So the next talking point we go to is penalties. So we mentioned this last week where we talked about often I feel like the FIA doesn't look at what kind of precedents they're setting. When they give a penalty, they're setting out similar behaviour will get the same sort of penalty. And sometimes it feels like they don't think about that. Now, there's 2 penalties, Gasly's and Daniel Ricciardo's. So we'll start with Gasly. Absolutely sent it on Stroll. I think they actually bumped wheels a couple of laps before where Stroll came back across the racing line, a behaviour that I really detest. But yeah, Gasly went down the inside, locked up, pretty much left Stroll no room, but then continued on. Now, a lot of us were expecting to get a message to say, hey, look, you're going to have to give the place back, and he will give the place back. But he didn't. He continued on going, and he was the faster car. And by the time he pitted, he was 4.4 seconds ahead of Stroll. Now, he was given a 5-second penalty. So it kind of made it worth it. And then that also comes back then to Danny Rick. I think his penalty was maybe a little bit harsh. Yeah, there was a collision. There was contact. He was on the inside. But he kind of went for it. And I feel like the ruling at the moment is you have to be alongside, so axle to axle. Whereas I feel like if you're rear axle to front axle, you should still be given the space, because at that point you've already committed. You can't disappear. Now, he nerfed Tsunoda out the way. Tsunoda was out pretty much on the spot, and he was given a 10-second penalty. He managed to catch the cars ahead and pull away by more than 10 seconds. So where he finished with the penalty, he still ended up in the same place. And again, feels worth it. He did a move. Another driver didn't finish the race, so they're not going to come back past you anymore. He managed to clear cars ahead and then still finish in the same place. Now, this brings me back to an issue where often we hear the teams talk about the delta to make an overtake. And sometimes we hear like, oh, at this track, you need to be 1.5 seconds faster than the car ahead to be able to overtake. Now, if that's true, if you're going to get a 10-second penalty for taking that other car out and ending their race, and you are not 1.5 seconds faster than them, you're only 1 second faster than them, so you can't pass. So what's to say you don't just give them a little nerf, out the way, wheel on wheel, push them out the way, you get a 10-second penalty. If you've got more than 10 laps left of the race, it's worth it then, because you're going to make up the 10 seconds on them and anybody else. So is this a symptom of the overtaking issues in Formula 1, or is this a symptom of the stewarding in Formula 1? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, because sometimes it does seem worth it to get a penalty. Next up, let's talk about the race as a whole. It was quite boring. It was definitely not one of the most entertaining races. Now, I think there was an undertone of a very potentially entertaining race, in the fact of it wasn't overtake laden, but there was this very tactical underlayer of the three tyres had very different characteristics and how long and how far you could take all those tyres. You had 3 different tyres with 3 very different operating ranges. The hard could basically do pretty much the whole race. The medium was very consistent, and the soft was a lot faster, but just didn't have the long-term wear. Although other drivers like Danny Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel proved that maybe it does. So I felt there could have been this really good titanic battle of, you'd have potentially drivers who could do one less stop but on slower, harder tyres, being caught by people who maybe are doing more stops but on the fastest tyre. So can they reclaim that time that they lost during the pit stop? And it just never really materialised. I think that's aided by Red Bull and Max Verstappen have the best driver and car combo at this point. Driver and car is very much working well together, and they have pace to waste. They have pace in excess. But then also the fact that Mercedes were there but not really, and Ferrari were nowhere. So we kind of had it set up for a good race, and it just kind of fizzled out, and it was quite a boring race. I don't know what could be done to spice it up. I think that maybe could there be track changes? We know we have this strange less air, as I mentioned before, the high downforce wings, but the actual low amount of downforce generated. Could there be some options where just kind of, the problem is we want to excite it, but we don't want to force it into something that's not genuine. So it's a tricky one. On a side note, another note that I noticed, and I don't know if you guys did out there, but every time we went to a Ferrari on board, I'll try and get a little clip here. But the sound was very different from weeks before. It sounded very whiny, almost like there was some sort of transmission whine or something that was definitely different about the audio on the Ferrari onboards that we never saw the weeks before. So let me know if you guys and girls noticed that, and if you're in the know-how and you know reason why. Is it a different microphone setup? Is it placed somewhere different? Is it the lower atmosphere being higher up elevation, or was it something else that not mentioned there? I'd like to know. One thing that I did notice also, I have to say props to it, was did anybody notice Esteban Ocon's line coming out of the four, five chicane. So you go down main straight, through the first chicane, down that mini straight, and then you have another chicane there. Now he came under attack from a couple of drivers, but did you notice he goes left and then right? He would deliberately not go to the curb, be quite slow and deliberate, and put the car right in the middle. So as somebody would come for the cutback, there's just Esteban Ocon's rear end there. And I saw that 2 or 3 times. I thought, that's really clever there. He's defended. He knows he's going to be vulnerable because there's the hairpin after there. And was just deliberately slow on the apex to put his car right in the middle of the exit road. So there's no way to get back underneath. And I thought that was very intelligent. I am not an Ocon fan. I definitely am not an Ocon fan. But I saw that and I thought that's very clever, mature driving from him there. Next up, we've got a bit of a funny one. So there's been a lot of talk about Ted Kravitz this weekend with the issues between himself, Max Verstappen and Red Bull. We're not going to go into there, but what I'm going to do is just play this clip here.
And they are looking concerned. Obviously there's nothing they can do, whether it's overheating or some sort of technical issue, as he drops further back. And does that look like it's terminal now? No, that's a Williams.
Emotional damage!
So as you can see, I think we was all expecting, we knew something was not quite right with Fernando Alonso's car, and the fact that he sees a car going slowly on the TV screen and goes, oh, it looks like that's Alonso. No, that's a Williams. I thought that was pretty funny. And the final talking point from F1, we've got another one after this, would be, is Lewis Hamilton still the pantomime villain? So I know we've seen him be booed in places like Spain. Of course, he had this issue with him and Fernando Alonso, so you can kind of understand why there is this villain status. But he's had battles with Max Verstappen, and we had a whole title controversy. But he's never had an issue with Checo Perez, and never had an issue with the Mexican people. Yet we got to the podium celebrations or the podium interviews, and we could see him being booed by the Mexican crowd. I don't quite understand why. Personally, I don't like that kind of behaviour. We've seen it creeping more and more over the years. Some people say it's because of Drive to Survive. I personally don't think it is that, because I remember people like Sebastian Vettel being booed, Nico Rosberg being booed way before Drive to Survive. But it's something that I really don't agree with. It's something that I'm used to seeing in football. When people would have their national anthems, certain people would boo the other team's national anthem, which I think is really disrespectful and shouldn't be tolerated. So I thought it was weird that he was being booed. Now, what has he ever done to the Mexican people? And I assume most people there for Checo Perez, being their national hero, he hasn't done anything to them either. So does that mean that everybody there was just Red Bull fans and there's still that animosity there? I have to say thumbs up to Checo Perez though. He was the one that turned around and he was waving the finger at the crowd saying, look, this ain't right. It's not needed. It's not wanted. Stop doing that kind of thing. Which it's nice to see a driver stand up to that kind of behaviour, because sometimes this booing it from the crowd before, we've seen drivers almost try and ignore it, which is, yeah, I get it. If you give people a reaction, it gives them something to react to, but sometimes it does help for somebody to stand up and say, no, that's not actually fair and that's not the right thing to do. And the final point that I want to bring up this week is something that we've seen here in the NASCAR. Wow.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack. So
final lap, he needs to go for it. He needs to get, I believe, in top 5 to carry on. I don't quite understand how the standings works in NASCAR, but he needs to get top 5. He's 10th, and he goes full board, foot to the floor, and just yeets it all the way around the barrier and comes home, I believe it's in second or something like that, but above the fifth that he needed. Completely destroys the car. You can see the car's not steering correctly afterwards, but gets it. This is a tactic straight out of sim racing. We see this in Gran Turismo, Forza, every kind of sim racing. It's called wall riding, we normally call it. And wow, it must have been something they thought, hey, you know what, this might be possible. If this happens, do we pull this card? Now, there's been a lot of talk of, does NASCAR ban this kind of move? But then it's like, that was deliberate, but would you be able to tell the difference if it was, say, accidentally pushed into the wall, and because he's accidentally pushed into the wall, just thought, sod it, last lap, last corner, foot to the floor, and just yeeted it all the way around. So it's going to be interesting. If they don't ban it, will other people do it? Will we get to the final round in NASCAR and leading driver's not going to win the title, and he just absolutely nails it round a wall ride all the way around the last corner? Be very interesting to see. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this week's chat here on Chewing Up the Apex. If you did, go and subscribe, because there's going to be more content. I'm thinking of doing some reaction videos as well, just to see how those go. So give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this, if you didn't like the format, just let me know. Put it in the comments down below, or give it a thumbs down. Just make sure you give the feedback, because if I don't know I'm doing a poor job, then I can't make it better for you guys out there. But until the next time, goodbye.